So welcome everybody. So glad you guys are all here. My name is Anthony Vulin, and I am the owner of the Collective Realty. I'm going to share a screen for you guys real quick. So this is the front of our office currently, and I just wanted to make sure that all of you guys out there who are watching, who are friends, family, our clients we care so much about, it's our mission with the Collective to help you get on a path to creating wealth through real estate. And that's truly what our mission is. There are so many different ways to create wealth through real estate, whether you're a first-time home buyer, whether you're refinancing, investing, remodeling your property, and of course, protecting your wealth once it's there, we'll be talking about as well. So I'm super, super excited to have all of you guys here today. I'd like to introduce my panelists. We have Tim, who's going to be talking to us about renting versus owning. He's a great agent with the Collective. He'll be our first speaker today. Then we're going to go right into Marty and Natalie. They're my favorite lenders, are amazing. And they're going to give us a lot of information on what's happening with mortgages in this market, as well as refinances. There's a really cool way to get a loan on a 203K loan if you wanted to remodel a property right now. That's really, really popular. A lot of people aren't selling and moving up, but they are remodeling their homes, and that's a great way to put wealth back into your property. And if you don't have the money, we have the way to do it. Also, after that, my father, I'm super happy who's here. His name's Anthony as well. He's gonna make sure that everyone is aware of how to protect their wealth once they're owning a property, and talking about putting your property into trust and why that's so important. Then we have Stephanie Ragle, who's gonna be speaking to us on ADUs. It's much easier to build an ADU than it used to be, and I'm super excited to have her introduce some of the ways that we're able to start doing that now that we weren't before. And then we have Will. He's the director of our commercial division at the Collective, and we have an amazing meetup group that's just teaching people how to invest in multifamily, and we'll talk about that, and Will's going to tell his personal story on how he first started investing in multifamily and where he's at now. Then we have Marty talking about flipping properties. Is it a good time to flip now? Let's find out. And then Natalie will talk to us about how to buy multifamily properties with very little money down, with an FHA loan, 3.5% down. Can you really buy a fourplex with that? We'll find out with Natalie. And then I'm going to close up with some legislative updates and question and answers from anyone, and go from there. So we expect to be this call expects to be about an hour, possibly just a little over an hour, so we won't be too long. We are recording it on Facebook Live, so it'll be on our Collective Facebook page. Tomorrow it will be on our YouTube page, so it'll be a resource if you wanted to send that to anyone or go back and review. Just search the Collective Realty on YouTube and we'll be there as well. So without further ado, let's talk about what the heck is going on in our market right now. Thanks to COVID, you know, so many people have said that we are, let me stop sharing this. So many people have said, you know, we really are expecting the market to crash this year, and COVID is going to ruin everything. The economy is going to be terrible, which is not great, but we expect the real estate market to do the same. So has that really happened? We really haven't seen prices change too much. So just to give you a little background, before COVID, prices were slightly going down. We saw a trend in the market where prices were moving down slightly. Depending on the neighborhood, you know, of course it's going to vary, but the overall trend was that. Since COVID now, we've really seen prices be pretty stable, be pretty comparable to what they were before COVID. Anything over 1.5 million has slowed down, and prices have come down slightly. But anything under that, it's still, prices are very stable. And the reason is because inventory is extremely low. You know, a lot of people are not selling unless they really have to at this moment. So inventory was low before COVID, it's even lower now. But we do have a moderate demand that's out there. The demand wasn't as strong as it was before COVID, because a lot of people's jobs are a little bit different at this moment. But because inventory is so low, our demand is still seen as strong enough to keep prices stable. Another reason why prices are staying stable are rates. Interest rates right now are at an all-time low, and we'll go into a little bit more details on that. But there's rates that you can get under 3%. It's pretty incredible. So half of our market is actually first-time home buyers. And that's why the market under 1.5 million is actually being really stable, and there's possibly multiple offers if you're looking for a property in that. But under 1.5 million, we are still seeing multiples and market strong. It's because the interest rates are so low. So if you were looking at prices in which you could afford a year ago, it's different now. You could afford more. So since prices haven't actually changed, but interest rates have, the amount that you're able to afford is different now than it was even just as short as a year ago. So again, I'm so glad that you guys are here. We'd love for you to ask any questions that you have. There's a Q&A box right at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I would love to have a couple questions answered for each panelist after they speak. And then if we have time at the end of our session, we'll have time for more. So again, today's session is going to be an introduction to how to build wealth through real estate. And our intention is to have multiple seminars after this with each of these speakers featured in their own seminar because there's just so much detail that can be talked about in each of these topics. So we went over all the speakers. Now I guess let's just go right into our first topic. I mean, hey, getting on the path to owning has to start from the beginning, has to start somewhere. And it starts from saying, you know what, I'm tired of building my landlord's wealth. I'm going to start doing that for myself somehow. And going from renting to owning is one of the most important and biggest financial decisions that you can do that will help you long-term more than any other decision you make. So Tim is going to tell us his story about when he went from leasing to owning. I mean, tell us about that.
Thanks, Anthony. First of all, I'd like to thank Anthony for bringing all of this together. And one of the most important things when you actually do start to pull the trigger and go from leasing to owning is to assemble a team. And we have a fantastic team that we're all, you're going to hear from all of them, and I've worked with all of them, and they're some of the best in the business. So I just wanted to start off with that. My journey itself started when I moved to Venice in 1997, and I was renting a house. They were a couple. They owned two houses next door to each other. In 99, they broke up, and they were getting ready to sell the house that I was in. Great. This is fantastic. Everything was fantastic. It was they were actually going to get me a break on commissions, so we didn't have to pay commissions. The agent was into it. The price was great. $335,000 in 99. 5 blocks from the beach, 2 blocks from Gold's Gym. It was a fantastic deal. And I was looking at this and going, okay, but I'm $21,000 short of a 20% down, which slowed me down. And then we had some financial issues with my company that decided to go out of business. So, that was a problem. I probably could have gotten around that had I had a great team like I do now. But in my head, I was like, well, I can't afford this. So I gave up. And I moved to another place in Venice, spending $1,475 a month in December of 99, in the middle of the hood. Actually, this was in Oakwood, a very different neighborhood. I managed to deal with it. The neighborhood came out of really scary to kind of fun. And I lived there for 13 years until 2013, at which point I had a small inheritance from my father that I managed to grow with reasonably, good investment in mutual funds in the stock market. And suddenly I had my 20% down. Yay. So at that point in my head, I'm ready, contracted a really good real estate agent named Ash, who I still work with to this day. He's fantastic. And got a place in Leimert Park. Now, do I live in the beach? No. I had to move inland. And a lot of people fight that. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. But I'm, in 2020, I'm actually.
Uh-oh, did we lose Tim for a minute? I think Tim is frozen. Let me give it one more second. Tim, you're frozen. Okay, so we'll move on for a minute and we'll get back to Tim's story on
20% down.
Tim, you froze for a minute, so we were just talking about you moving from the beach back to the Mert Park. So maybe go back just 10 or 15 seconds.
Oh, just that, why did I wait so long? And one of the main reasons was that I believe this truism that you needed 20% down to buy property, which is absolutely 100, 1,000, 1,000,000% not true. There are many ways to buy for 3.5% down with various programs that our lenders can talk to you about. There's down payment assistance programs, whatever. That was a dumb reason to wait. The second reason was, in my head, lifestyle is always better than wealth building. Hell, I was 5 blocks from the beach, 3 blocks from Abercrombie, 2 blocks from Rose. When am I ever going to be able to afford that without spending way more than I could afford? The problem is that's true for a while, and I can't really argue with anybody that has a great rent control property that doesn't want to move. But if you start looking at things over time, that decision becomes extremely costly. And
so what does that mean for you? So if you continue to rent, where would you be? And now that you've owned, how has your wealth changed?
Well, had I continued to rent in Venice, first of all, God only knows what would have happened because, there's always the chance that the property would have been sold or developed. When I moved out in 2013, that property was redeveloped for really not that much money. My rent went from $2,200 on that property to $5,500. And, that's one thing. The other thing that I'm looking at had I kept staying in Venice and paying that rent, conservatively, I would have put $100,000 into rent, which instead I've been putting into my own equity and, actually paying myself rather than the landlord paying his equity. I've been paying my own equity and I've been building my own wealth.
So how much equity have you built?
I bought the house for $400,000 in 2013. It's now was recently appraised when I did a hard money loan recently. It was appraised at $1.1 million. I have over $550,000 of equity in this house.
$550,000 of equity. If you were renting, you may have been able to save, a few $1,000s here and there a month, but you're not going to have 500,000. So while you're paying your mortgage, some of that money is basically going to pay off, go right into equity, right? So it's almost like Natalie loves to say, it's going right into a savings account. I love that analogy. It's almost forcing you to put money into savings because you're going to get 100% of that money back. The money that you're paying for interest is deductible. And then you have someone else who's working for you for free where you're doing nothing. You're enjoying the sun. That person or that thing is the state of California or Los Angeles or whatever city you buy in. They're working for you because prices most likely are going to be going up. They do go up over time. They go up and down, but over time, they're going to continue to go up. So you have the state or your city working for you, putting money, giving you equity for you doing nothing besides living in a home in your shelter. So it's a pretty amazing path to get on, and it's not as hard as you think. You don't have to have 20%, like Tim said. And over time, your equity will continue to build. I mean, I know so many people's stories where there's no way they would be able to retire if they didn't have a house. The only retirement money that they have is the equity in their house. So can you imagine, a society where we have a majority of renters versus owners, and those people who are renting don't have that equity in their house and can't retire? It would be a big disaster. So Tim, anything else to wrap up what you're saying?
I just want to say, a riff on a number of points you just made. One is that, it's a great investment because you get to live in your house. You can't live in your stock certificates or your bond certificates. I mean, they can be great investments as part of a portfolio, but you don't get the utility of ownership and living and not paying rent. Not paying that rent is huge.
Yeah.
And, there's another myth of buying versus owning is that it's scary and you have to have perfect credit. That's not true at all. It's actually, if you get a good agent and a good lender, they can get you through the process where you can build your credit and get ready to buy, and your agent can actually make it fun. I loved the agent that I worked with, which is why I got into this business. It was way big fun once I sat down and did it. And then at the end of the day, I got all this equity versus I would have had nothing. I would have been $100,000 in the hole, and here I am.
I love that.
So that's kind of my wrap up. Just realize that it's not difficult. You don't need 20% down. You have to come up with a way to get your down payment. And if you're ready to go, talk to an agent and talk to a lender who can get you started on building your credit and figuring out how to get enough cash to actually get a down payment.
Awesome. So again, we will have seminars just on how to get your first home, on buying your first home. That'll be coming up, so stay tuned for that. But let's talk to Marty and Natalie, our lenders. I mean, if we can expand a little bit more on what Tim was talking about as far as low down payments, is that possible? Not perfect credit. And what do payments look like? I mean, say, hey, you have $50,000 and you want to buy a condo for, one bedroom for $500,000. What are payments going to look like? Are they comparable to rent right now or what?
Well, yeah. I think it, depends on the HOA. Sorry, Marty.
Go for it.
I think it's also fun to note just quickly on the rent versus buy. Whenever we draw up one of the forms of what you save and make and earn through equity and tax write-offs of owning compared to what you end up spending in rent, the bottom line after 10 years is incredible. It's almost exactly, it always ends up being exactly whatever you spend after 10 years in rent is what you have left in equity in the home. So after 10 years, if you've spent $400,000 in rent, which is kind of what you spend in 10 years of rent, $400,000. It's crazy, but it's true. That is actually almost exactly what you've earned in equity or more. And that doesn't even take into consideration the tax deduction that you get and the write-off that you have legitimately for owning a home. So it really is, it's like a difference of losing 400,000 or having 400,000 in your pocket. So very true. The rent versus buy is a great thing to look at. Anyway, but you were saying 10% down on 500 basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I could comment on that for a second, guys. If you buy like a property, let's say I'm just going to go off of my own personal experience right now, and that's like I have a condo that's in West Hollywood that's for $550,000 at the moment. And I don't know, and this is something that Tim and Anthony could probably answer, along with Will can answer, obviously, what rents are in West Hollywood for a one-bedroom condo. Obviously, rent something to, I think, is closer to $3,000, I'm assuming. Am I correct on that? So if you buy something, obviously, with $550,000, with putting 10% down, which is $55,000, I mean, your all-in payments, including property tax, insurance, mortgage insurance, which is something we could talk about. With anything you put less than 20% down, you have to have this thing called mortgage insurance. There's ways around that. Obviously, it's very detailed, but it's something for you to understand that there's mortgage insurance involved. With HOA fees, it would be about $3,150, and that's not even discussing the the tax benefits. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll end up closer to like the $2,700 effective payments versus the the $3,150 that you'll be paying. And it's very true. The putting money in your savings account is absolutely true. You're paying down your balance on a monthly basis, and that's just for savings account that you're created.
Absolutely. So FHAs are a great loan for first-time buyers, and they're 3.5% down. So how? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. FHAs are great loans for first-time home buyers who may have some credit issues or may have, certain earnings that we can't show all of it. So I have to qualify them using all of the income and my ratios, which is how we qualify people. We call it debt to income ratios, might be higher. FHA allows for a super high debt to income ratio. They allow for 3.5% down. They allow for a FICO score of 580 and above. They allow for all the funds to come from a gift and zero money in the bank after. So they like.
That is amazing.
It's amazing. FHA.
So you can have low credit, you can have a 3.5% down. That 3.5% down could be a gift, and you have the opportunity to purchase a property. That's amazing.
Exactly, exactly. Look, anything that has high risk has high insurance, right? So with FHA, if you have all of those built up risk factors, we're going to go FHA because it's incredible you can get a loan with those risk factors. If you don't have those risk factors, if your credit is fairly good and you have the 10% down, then we're going to go conventional because the mortgage insurance is less. And it makes more sense to do it that way. But if those risk factors are cumulative and they're present in the file, then we have the option of going FHA, which is incredible, and rates are very, very low on FHA. But there is more mortgage insurance involved when it comes to FHA. So you just have to balance out and structure the file correctly.
So Kelly Carrington's asking, can I get an FHA loan if I already have another mortgage?
Yes, you just can't have another FHA mortgage. So you're only allowed one FHA at a time.
And we'll talk about a little more of that towards the end.
Yeah.
How to build your portfolio through FHA.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can only have one at a time, but you can have another conventional loan. It's really not first time home buyer. It's just primary home.
Primary
home. So you can't get an FHA on a second home or an investment property. It has to be the home you live in.
Got it. Marty, what are people doing right now as far as refinancing? Where are rates now? Like if someone, like a few of my clients said, oh, Anthony, I already refinanced last year. I can't do it again. Can you do it again? Should you do it again?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've been refinancing people that we financed 3 months ago. So that were getting rates of 3.8 percentage points. So now all of a sudden they're back and they saw the rates drop even further lower to the 2.5 percentage rates. So it's created a lot of movement in the refinance industry. So, I think I've heard some people say be kind to your lender. And so, yes, we're saying be kind to us at one point because the phone calls are not stopping at the moment in time. But we're here to help, obviously. One thing I do want to point out is, there are in Los Angeles, we do have a lot of borrowers that don't have traditional ways of qualifying as well. We've got people that, traditionally in order to qualify for a mortgage, you'd have to provide us your tax returns, your bank statements and things of that nature, and you have to qualify accordingly. And if you don't file the income on your taxes, then you're not going to be able to qualify. That's what you're told by your bank. But there are other non-traditional type of mortgages as well, too, for the people that are in the entertainment industry and the such as well, that can't document their income through taxes. So I just want to make sure I threw that out there as well for people that have, that could document their income through their bank statements or through their 1099s and things of that nature, that they would be able to qualify for mortgages as well. Just creates a little bit more of a pool of buyers who thought that they cannot buy a home, but they can buy a home.
One question from Richard. Hi, if your current income situation is spotty or a bartender waiting tables and not currently working as such, so current income isn't the same as what it was in the prior 2 years, do you have to wait until your job situation returns to normal first, or can you use maybe last year's tax returns, or what's the deal?
With COVID, you have to go with current market, what you're earning currently. And it's unfortunate. It's changed the trajectory of lending in a sense where we just have to make sure that we're doing sound and good credit risk decisions. So we're not finding ourselves in situations when we were in 2008. So ultimately, by making these decisions, we're really trying to protect the housing industry overall, trying to make sure that people are not going to lose their homes.
Okay. Makes sense. Natalie, some of our clients they're not moving, they're not selling, they're not doing anything, but their kitchen is old and they want to remodel their kitchen, and now is a great time, to do something like that. Anytime you put money into your home, you're going to get it back when you sell it, as long as you don't go too crazy. But what's a good loan to do that?
So we have a couple choices. We have a 203K loan, which is through FHA. So you can purchase only 3.5% down and get money towards renovation. Or we have Fannie and Freddie, which is conventional financing, the standard government agencies. We have their version of a renovation loan, and that's called home style. Both are excellent, great ways. On home style, you can do it as an investment property. You can do it as a second home. You can get renovation loans for both of those options. Obviously, FHA, it has to only be on a primary. If they already live in the house and they want to redo the kitchen and they don't have money, there's a couple ways around it. It might be better for them just to get an equity line if they have some equity in the property. An equity line is the cheapest way to get some money out to fix up the property and do renovations. If they don't have a lot of equity, then we can look at refinance renovation loans, which are a little bit more costly, a little bit more timely, but we will give them the money without needing the equity in the property towards renovation of the home. So it just depends which situation the buyer is in, but renovation loans are excellent. For standard homes, for purchases, they're incredible. Any house you see on the market that says cash only, normally the listing agent meant to say cash only or renovation loan. Because a cash only home, it means it's a home that can't be financed. It's not lendable because a lender always wants a home to be move-in ready.
So maybe the kitchen is messed up, or there's,
or there's no bathroom,
Yeah.
or none of the utilities are working. When you move into a house, for it to be lendable, it needs to meet all health and safety standards.
Exactly.
So if it doesn't, normally you'll see it says cash only, but that doesn't mean it's cash only. It means that we can do a renovation loan. Like if the house has been sitting on the market for 40 days, then the seller might not mind a 45 to 60 day escrow turn time, which is what a renovation loan needs. And you can get primary buyers in there and they can put $100,000 to $200,000 in work into the property and put as little as 3.5% down, and then watch that property within 6 months of renovation now have $150,000 in equity in it. So that's what's great about renovation. It's only worth $500,000 now. They put $100,000 or $150,000 into the property in renovation, and when it's done, it's worth $800,000.
Yeah, exactly.
That's typical with renovation loans. That's why people flip houses. It's because they think this.
And we're going to talk a little more about flipping in just a minute.
I know Marty's going to get to that. Yeah.
So there's definitely ways to do that. Natalie and Marty are great sources. Everyone who's on this call, you'll get an email after with everyone's contact information, so you can reach out to anyone you want to in detail. We'll also have time at the end of the call to do more questions. Right now, we're going to move on to our next section. My father, who is on the line, he's not live on video, but he's live on the phone. And once you own a property, you got to protect your wealth. You know, it's as simple as that. And there's too many clients that I see that are selling their properties and it was never put into a trust. So, Dad, Anthony Vulin, would you like to talk to us a little bit about protecting your wealth once you own real estate? What are some things you should be considering?
Absolutely. I'd like to welcome everyone today. We're going to talk about is sort of at the end of the road part of it. And right now we're talking about the beginning. So you have to have that beginning, that groundwork that everyone's talking about. But this is what happens towards the end. A lot of people feel that if they have a will, that they're protected on how they're going to pass their property on. Okay. A will goes through probate. A will names an executor and it names beneficiaries. A will has no effect whatsoever until a person has passed away. So they say a will speaks at the time of death. If you have no will, the property would still go into probate. The difference is there is no named executor. Someone can go to the court and say, I want to be the administrator, which is the same thing as an executor. And normally the court will approve someone who has some connection to the family. If you don't have a will, you have absolutely no say on who's going to get your property. So with a will or without a will, there will be a probate. The downsides of a probate are, in Los Angeles County, a probate used to take 6 to 8 months. When they closed all the probate courts except for one, probates are taking 1.5 to 2 years. So the
Wow.
time element is a problem. Number two, just an average property in LA County, and I'm not talking about a really nice piece of property, just an average piece of property to go through probate is probably going to be somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 in fees and costs to go through probate. That's the second reason why you don't want to have a probate. It's going to be your beneficiaries that are going to be paying all of these expenses. The third reason you don't want a probate, the probate is a public process. Anyone can go to the court, pull the file and say, oh, look at Mr. James had these obligations, these debts, or Mr. Smith owned these assets and had these stocks. And it has every information about you that's a public record. So you don't want to probate because it's expensive, it's intrusive into your privacy, and it takes a long time to go through the channels of probate. So to avoid a probate, you set up a living trust. And it's called a living trust because once it's signed, that document is in effect now. Now, there are living trusts that are revocable and those that are non-revocable. Most trusts are revocable. That means that you can amend it or change it or get rid of it or transfer your funds or add new things to your trust at any time. Generally speaking, irrevocable trusts are set up for larger estates, for people that have assets that are going to be going to charity while they're when they pass away, and some cash flow to their beneficiaries now. But most people have a revocable trust. In a trust, there's several terms that you should be familiar with. One is called a trustor. Sometimes it's called a settlor. The trustor is the person or persons who own the assets, who owns the real property, has the brokerage account, has the bank accounts. Another name for one of the responsibilities in a trust is a trustee. The trustee, or it could be co-trustees, are that person or persons that make decisions for the trust, that have the authority to transfer assets, to sell property, to buy property. Normally when someone sets up a trust, they are both the trustor and the trustee. And in the trust, they would name a successor trustee. Now, a successor trustee would take over under two conditions. Number one, if the trustor passed away, then the successor trustee takes over to distribute the assets according to the terms of the trust. If the settlor becomes incompetent, then the successor trustee takes over to run the trust, to pay the bills, to handle any investments, buy property, sell property, whatever has to be done to protect the trust assets. Along with the trust, there's something that's called a pour-over will. A pour-over will, like you're pouring water, is there to protect assets that are not in the trust that will eventually be transferred into the trust. The problem is, if it's real property that you forgot to put into the trust, it goes through a probate. Well, the whole purpose of doing a trust is to avoid a probate. If you have assets that are less than $166,250 that's held in one person's name, then that asset can be transferred without a probate. But if the assets are more than that, or if they're real property, it will eventually get into the trust, but it has to go through a probate. The trust also names beneficiaries. Usually I tell my clients that we divide that into three areas. Who gets your personal items, your household furniture, jewelry, automobiles? Who gets your real property? And you have several options with real property. You can state in your trust that my real property goes to one person or goes to several persons. Or in the case where children don't get along or the beneficiaries don't get along, you may state in your trust that I want my property sold and the money divided among these beneficiaries. That way no one can say that, no one can state that they have an argument on whether or not the property should be sold.
Which is pretty common, right?
Beg your pardon?
That's pretty common way that people do it, we see, right?
Right. What happens in some cases, people have multiple children or multiple beneficiaries, and they say, I give my property to my 5 children or 4 children. Okay, so the trustor passes away. Now one child or beneficiary says, I need to live in this house. I don't have a job. The other one says, I want some income. I want to rent the property. The other one says, I have got a lot of bills. I want to sell this property and pay off my bills. And then they all hire attorneys and waste away the money of the asset. So you have those options of transferring the property directly to someone or having the property sold and the money divided, and that avoids any arguments.
Yeah, that's huge.
Another document that's important, two documents that are important when you set up a trust are powers of attorney over assets, which means you give someone the authority to handle assets that you own that are not in the trust if they become incompetent. It also gives that person the authority to deal with Medicare, Social Security, insurance companies. Another power of attorney is a power of attorney for healthcare, that you name someone to make healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to. If you don't have any of these documents in place and you become incompetent, then someone has to go to court and have a conservatorship declared. That costs thousands of dollars. You have to go to court every year. You have to pay social workers. And two things you don't want in life is you don't want a probate. Of course, that's after you're gone. And you don't want a conservatorship. Those two things will cause nothing but problems and take away from the financial wealth that you've accumulated.
So how much does it cost then to set up a trust versus probate?
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, a basic probate in the LA City, LA County area could be anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. If you have a living trust, the basic fee to set up a living trust for one person with one piece of property, along with all the powers of attorney, the deed transferring the property into the trust, just to give you a ballpark, you're probably talking about $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 in attorney's fees, and then you'd have recording fees, and then you'd have notary fees.
So probably 10 times less.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And the time that you save.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have complete control of those assets as long as you're alive and competent. You can change them, you can transfer them, you can amend the trust.
If you are on this call and you don't have a trust and you own property, please consider one, because I don't want you to waste money and time going through a probate and causing headaches and stress and tension between family or whoever's going to be inheriting property. So if it's you or maybe your parents or grandparents, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, sometime soon. Anything?
I tell my clients,
yeah.
I tell my clients, anyone that owns real property needs to have a living trust. If you don't have real property, then it's something to talk about. Then, it may or may not need it. But with real property, you absolutely need a trust in today's world.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dad. Okay. Is there any questions? If anyone has questions, you can type them in the Q&A section. And again, we can get to some of these at the end, but I don't see any questions on this topic right now. Any last comments? Are you good? All right. Thank you.
One quick last comment, Anthony. Something that people really get confused about are bank accounts. There's different ways of holding a bank account. You can have a joint account, which means either person has access to that account. You can have an account that says POD, which means payable on death. That means when you die, it goes to someone. Or it could say in trust for. It has nothing to do with a living trust. That means when someone passes away, it goes to that person. It means the same thing. Or you can have an individual account with a beneficiary, specifically named beneficiary. That's not a problem. What you never want to have is you never want to have an account that's in your name alone, no joint owner, no beneficiary, and not in the trust, because that bank account will be subject to some type of a probate.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so important to think about it, especially now during these crazy times that we're in with COVID. I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, you just don't know in general what's going to happen, but especially now, it's just a reminder. It was a reminder for me a few months ago when I was sick for a little while, and I was like, you know what? Who knows what could happen? This is an important topic that I need to get out there and make sure everyone's aware of, and that their assets are protected, because it's something we don't really talk about enough. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'll send out your contact info to everyone, and I really, really appreciate you being here. Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
All right, and next up is Stephanie Ragle, here to talk about ADUs. accessory dwelling units, granny flats. What else do they call them?
That works. That works. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I'm with Office 42 Architecture. We do multifamily, single family, commercial, and nonprofit work. We're mission driven. We have lots of projects all over LA. So I'm going to I'm going to share screen and show you a little bit and just go really quickly through ADUs. So first of all, there are two kinds we've been hearing about now, right? This is a change in the code in January. So accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, right? So accessory dwelling units.
Uh-oh. Give it a second. Stephanie, I think you are paused for a moment. I'm sure you'll be right back. You guys can see accessory dwelling units are attached. They can be attached, detached, or garage conversions, which is really awesome. They have to have a full kitchen. That's also has a built-in cooktop and hood and a full bath. Multiple bedrooms are allowed. 1,200 square feet or max for lot. I'll let Stephanie talk about that. 800 square feet allowed above lot limit. Oh, Stephanie, are you back? Maybe she logged out, but we'll be back. So why don't we come back to Stephanie, and who's next up on our list? Will. So if you own a house, the next step is you have wealth, you have equity in your house. Should you be investing in real estate, in multifamily, and what? Well, you have an amazing story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in multifamily and where you're at now?
Sure. So hi, everybody. My name is Will Tiao. I am the director of the commercial division here at the Collective Realty. I'm a broker who focuses on multifamily investments. I also have a property management company called Tiao Properties that I run with my wife, Diana, who's also a realtor here at the Collective. We manage a few hundred properties, and we're also investors and developers as well. So I actually was an investor first before I became a realtor. I started off with a 1-bedroom condo in Washington, D.C. that I bought for $180,000. And I ended up selling that for a little under $300K. I used those proceeds when I moved to Los Angeles to come and buy a multifamily property in Los Feliz. I remember I was a very bad client. I had 2 agents. I had one agent from Echo Park to West Hollywood and another from Beverly Hills to Santa Monica. I crossed the city in and out, and ended up buying a 4-plex in Los Feliz where I lived in one unit and I rented out the others. Did pretty well with that. We bought it in 2003. The market blew up, and then 2 years later, I ended up selling it and banking that equity and investing out of state. And then I rented back from the new owners. A few years later, I met my then fiance, now wife, and we decided to buy a house. And so we bought a house in Echo Park. And after we bought that house, I just started looking at the market, and we had started, at that was the point at which, after I bought that house, I decided to get my real estate license. And we both decided to get our real estate licenses. And, I saw where the market was heading, and I thought it would be a good idea to buy some more income properties. So in that round, we ended up buying, this was after the crash, after the 2008 crash. So we bought that house in Echo Park. The next thing we did was we saw a triplex. It was actually someone in the Collective who was listing that property. And so we bought that property through them. It was a triplex in Boyle Heights. And we did very well. It was a single family and a duplex in the back. Next, I had heard about a 5-unit property in Echo Park. I heard about it off market, and you might be like, so a lot of this I found in terms of trying to find the right investment property has been so much about just finding out where to find these things, right? So one, like I said, I I had, I was at the collective and there was another agent at the collective, and I was able to help get that property. In this scenario, I went to a seminar on property management, and there was a guy there, he realtor, and I mentioned I was in Echo Park, and he said, oh, I have an off-market property in Echo Park. It was a 5-unit property, 4-plex in the front, single family in the back. Again, I thought, my mother-in-law at the time was looking to buy an investment property. She wanted us to invest with her. The place was a wreck. I mean, it was like, we had enough money to buy it, and I knew what I needed to do with it. I knew that it was a diamond in the rough, because I just sold another 5-unit property down the street and done really well. So on that one, I brought on partners, because like I said, we had enough money to buy the property, but I didn't have enough money to renovate the property, potentially do tenant buyouts, do all the things I needed to do. So I brought on partners who had experience in those areas and brought some extra capital. We were able to end up doing tenant relocations, tenant buyouts, as well as, completely gutting and remodeling the place. And we bought that property for $900,000, and a year and a half later, I personally sold it for $2.75 million. So we tripled our we tripled, more than tripled actually. And that taught me so many things, right? That whole process taught me so many things. In the meantime, my house is building equity, the triplex is building equity. So we're starting to move our money around, started to buy into other properties, started to co-invest and work with others. So at this point, we have an interest in about 70 units, both in Los Angeles and out of state, but primarily in Southern California. And we're getting into different plays. Some of them are strict multifamily buy and holds, like my triplex in Boyle Heights. Some are, I have one that a triplex that we own in Highland Park with a partner that is on a 15,000 square foot lot that we can build up to 14 units. So that's what we're planning to do with that one. I have I'm a partner in an 8-unit in West Hollywood that we're now converting into a tenant in common play, where we're going to be selling off each of the units. And I'm going to be starting that in the fall, in about a month or so. And then finally, I have a play in Boyle Heights that I'm dealing with. That's, basically would cover an entire city block.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people are, if they would see you now, they're like, wow, this is what you have now, where you must have had a lot of money in your life and so on.
No, but this is the problem. This is the problem with owning real estate, right? Is that you're often cash poor, right? Because you have all this money and and then you have, obviously you're paying mortgages and whatnot, but you're building the equity. I mean, my plan is obviously to get to the point where our investments pay for themselves, and pay for our lifestyle. We're not at that point yet.
And it started with one property.
Starts with one property. It always starts with one. And I mean, we really are believers in putting our money where our mouth is. So I think it's really, so it does. It just starts with one, because as soon as you get that one, you get your feet wet, you kind of know, obviously we've made a lot of mistakes along the way and learned a lot. And that's why we have, one thing that Anthony and I started 3 years ago was the LA Multifamily Investor Networking Group. It's a meetup group. And every month we have a different speaker speaking about something specific with regards to multifamily investing. Last month we had someone, or just last week actually, we had someone speaking about the eviction moratorium. We've had people speaking about 1031 exchanges. We had Stephanie Ragle come on, talk about ADUs and development. Anything that has to deal with multifamily, but more importantly, it's also a forum to find deals. We've had agents there do off-market deals, and that's what I'm talking about. If you're an investor, you always have to have your eye out, and ears to the ground about what's available, because, you know, finding the right deal is really critical.
It's huge. And it's, you know, whether you're an investor right now, or you're like, okay, one day I want to own an investment property, join that group and learn. Every month we have sessions that have, you know, new relevant topics that we're all learning from each other from. Plus there's the networking aspect as well. We're doing everything through Zoom right now, and they've been really well attended. I posted it in our in the chat section, the website. So if you sign up for the meetup group, you'll get notified on all of our sessions. It's also posted on our Facebook page. A lot of our older videos are posted on our YouTube page. So if you're interested in specific topics, just go to the Collective Realty on YouTube and you can search for some of the older YouTube videos. So do you have anything to wrap up with? Or I want to get to Natalie to say like how to start. Anything else?
No, I think No, I think that's good. I think
was awesome.
Obviously it's critical to have a great lender like
Yes.
Marty or Natalie on your team, because obviously I couldn't do everything I do without all the leverage. I mean, really the key in getting the best return is knowing how to use that leverage to get more properties.
Yes. Okay, so I want to go to Natalie first. I know I said we're going to go to Marty, but Natalie, so it kind of falls into, if someone wants to invest in multifamily real estate right now, but they don't have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, starting in multifamily real estate with an FHA loan with 3.5% down, you have a client who's been doing that. Tell us their story.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I have a client that I've worked with for about 10 to 12 years, and she came to me, you know, over a decade ago and wanted to buy an FHA duplex. Units on FHA can be a little bit difficult with 3 and 4 units because it has a different kind of qualification that's needed. So on 3 to 4 units on FHA, the rents have to qualify the entire housing payment, which is the mortgage insurance, taxes, and insurance. And that can be tough in LA. So 3 to 4 units can be a little bit of a challenge in Los Angeles, but duplexes are amazing. So the limit for duplex loan amount this year in Los Angeles is $980,000. So you could buy $1,030,000 to $1,050,000 with like $50,000 to $70,000 down, get my loan to $980,000 and buy a duplex with FHA. So at the time she was looking at a $600,000 duplex. She had 3.5% down. She basically had like 20 grand in the bank. We were able to do 3.5% down duplex FHA. She lived in 1 unit, and about 6 months later, she wanted to buy a conventional loan. So she moved out of the duplex, put 5% down on a conventional, got out of the FHA, and bought a conventional. Then it was like a few years later, she called and there was a lot of equity now in the duplex. So she got out of the FHA loan and into a conventional loan. We refinanced her and pulled money out and got money to then kind of sit on. And then about 6 months later, 7 months later, she was able to buy another FHA duplex. And we kind of went through this, you know, and then got out of the FHA duplex loan into a conventional. So she had FHA available to her again. She ended up buying 4 FHA duplexes over 10 years. She also has 2 single family residences. And so over 10 years, she has 6 properties. Her initial investment was $20,000. We gave her closing cost credits. It's just amazing, the portfolio that she has been able to build after 10 years on an initial $20,000 investment into a duplex, because FHA allows you to really build your wealth in this way with investment properties. And now she has a bunch of investment properties, all duplexes, because it's easier, like I said, in Los Angeles, and they all earn a bunch of money. I'm refinancing all of them right now because the rates are so low. And we've got like so much equity in them at this point. The one from 10 years ago is now worth 850. The one from 8 years ago is worth, it's even more because she did some work on it, like 900. And these loans now, because we're 10 years later, they've been paying on them, they're like $500,000 balances, you know? So she's built all of this equity and all of this wealth and all of this rental income from the past 10 years, all based on being able to do an FHA loan with 3.5% down on, you know, basically an investment property.
I know. That's awesome. It's a pretty cool story. So there's a lot of myths out there where people think that you have to have so much money to start, but you don't always have to. It starts with taking that risk, doing that first step, getting in and moving your way up. So similar to what Will was doing, this is another great story with a loan that people are not familiar with.
But also having a lot of drive.
Yeah.
It's not somebody who is an extremely hard worker and can't be bothered with that stuff is going to have a different outcome. She is obsessed with real estate and really wanted to build a portfolio of homes for herself.
And
I will second that. I would say it's a business, right? If you're going to invest in properties, you are creating a second business or a business line for yourself. So you have to treat it as such.
Right. We always say money isn't free. You don't get to do nothing and earn money. You have to work, right? So having income property, it's work, and she is constantly working on it. We are always working together on like getting this and getting that, and me getting new pay stubs and getting this, and you know, like it's always a thing and it's always work for her. But she loves it and she's into it. And she calls me more than I call her so she can do more transactions, you know. But it is definitely, it's a job, and you have to be really driven, as she was, to work as hard as she did to make sure we were speaking on the year to get her out of it and into a new one, or refinancing a cash out to pull money to buy something else. Or, you know, there was always dealings happening on her part. It was her, you know, kind of assertiveness that got us there.
Exactly. And going on with what Will said, and if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know that, look, you got to have a business if you want to be extremely successful, and real estate is a way for you to create a business. You don't have to have a product to sell. You can do it through real estate and have a business that way and create an extreme amount of wealth over time if you're focused, and do it smart with the right team around you. So I just got an update from Stephanie. She's was working out of Echo Park, and I guess there's a rolling blackout, and her whole neighborhood power is out. So she is going to send me the links of her slides, and I'll email that out to everyone who's registered today. And we will have another session with her on ADUs, because I know a lot of you guys came in to hear about that, and it's a really great topic. So we'll have another session with her. We'll give her more time. So look out for that. So next, let's go to Marty. Hey, you know, flipping houses, it's another way to make money in real estate. Is that possible now? What's your experience with that?
Well, it's a whole nother business of its own. We've been talking about a lot of businesses today, but yeah, flipping is another side of the real estate piece that can create wealth. I have been a mortgage banker for 26 years. But I grew up with a dad that was an engineer and a builder, and so it's kind of within me, I guess, and it kind of gives me that creative outlet to be able to do something a little bit different, less with numbers, and figuring out DTIs and LTVs and, you know, all those wonderful things that we talked about with the acronyms. But I just wanted to, basically let you guys know that I've done, in the last 10 years, I've done about 20 flips, ranging from, you know, paint and carpet type of a place to a ground up construction. And you learn a lot through that process, obviously. So, and I just want to share some of that information with you. Some of the things that we talked about is tools that you would have, such as the lending tools that I've used in my own business to be able to leverage, as Will said, and to buy a property at minimum down payment and use my money to rehab the property as well. And or there are the tools that, you know, as Natalie and I discussed earlier, we could talk about doing construction loans as well. Those are tools that you have available to you to be able to do these flips. Why do I like flips? Is because it's a faster way to save money, in a sense where, you know, I was going to give you guys an example at the end of this my conversation, but I might as well get into it now. So for example, we talked about 203K loans. We said you could borrow money, you know, smaller amounts of money to do a rehab on a condo. Let's just use a condo as an example. You buy a condo, you rehab it, and you put about, you know, $35,000 into it. What do you get for $30,000 or $35,000? You probably will get new flooring, paint, probably a new kitchen, and probably a rehab bathroom or two, obviously. So hopefully you'll do some of that work yourself too. You're hopefully invested in your own business, which in this case would be the flipping side of things. And you would regain an equity in change, which is called a sweat equity, and or, you know, adding value to the property. In this case, it would be anywhere from 75,000 to 100,000 or more, obviously, given the fact that, given the location of the property. So how do you save, you know, $65,000 between 3 to 6 months? It's really hard to do, obviously. So, you know, we all have expenses and things of that nature. So if you're doing flips, it's a quick, fast way of accumulating wealth. You know, one of the things I do want to talk about, there's a few things I want to talk about, but I just want to condense it down to 3 points. And one of them is going to be working with the right realtor is super important. You have to convey to them exactly what you're looking for, what you're capable of doing, and onto a property, but whether it be hiring a GC or you're going to do the work yourself, or what type of work, whether it's paint and carpet and or ground up, obviously. You just have to communicate this to your realtor, because the realtor really needs to understand what type of return you're looking for as well. So let's say, for example, if you're doing a paint and carpet, you can sit down with your realtor and say, this is what it's going to look like at the end. And they might be able to tell you, well, if you make it look this way, your property is going to sell for $700,000. You're now buying it for $600,000. So therefore you have $100,000 equity if you do just the basic work. So it's really important to pick the right realtor. That's what I found in my experience, is that if you pick the wrong person, they're really not going to understand what you're trying to go for. That's one thing. The second thing is, buying, in my experience, has always been that buying in a geographic area that you could drive to. I don't like to buy properties in areas where I can't get to it, because I want to make sure that I can go to the property, inspect the property, because contractors are quote unquote slippery. They will not show up at work job site, and you are wondering why the project is now taking 6 months. And so I really want to go to the property, make sure that the contractors and the subcontractors are generally there, and or hire a project manager if you get into bigger projects, just to make sure that the person's showing up. That's one thing. The other thing is, you know, I really want to make sure that the quality of work is there, because liability is very important to me. As we discussed a lot of things earlier with, you know, Anthony Sr., basically protecting your wealth is you're buying this property, and all of a sudden, if you buy the property and not put it into an LLC and not protect it, is going to be a foolish mistake. So making sure the property is in some sort of like an entity is going to protect you. Secondly, it's going to also, you know, make sure that if somebody hurts themselves on the job site and whatnot, that protects you as well. So the ultimate issue is that I run into at the end is when you finish the product and you're bringing it to market to sell, it would be silly for me not to be able to see the property being built out, because if the inspector at the end identifies issues to the property that I don't know anything about, it could cost me a lot of money to refix all those issues that a contractor may have done incorrectly. So therefore, some people try to cheat the system and do work without permits. It's really important to get permits because that permitting process is going to make sure that you actually go through the inspections that the city requires to make sure that property is built out properly, because I am not a contractor. I want to make sure the inspectors, the city inspectors, are inspecting this property and making sure that I am now not going to have a liability at the end in my hands, where a buyer buys the property, all of a sudden there's some sort of like a hazardous situation, they hurt themselves, and guess who's going to get sued? It's going to be me. So it's really important to go through the permitting process properly. Hiring the right people is really important. Lastly, I just want to say is going to be getting a lot of bids. Don't stick with the first bid. Don't follow your aunt's recommendation. Make sure you get 3 bids across the board because they all vary. I've had the same job vary about $10,000 to $15,000 in bids. Where I did a roof, somebody quoted me $10,000, the other one quoted me $25,000, and it could vary vastly for the same level of work. There's nothing different. So make sure you get different bids to control your expenses and your costs, because every dollar that you put into this property is going to be ultimately your equity that you're giving away if you pay towards somebody else's expenses. So it's really important to make sure that you follow these 3, at the minimum, these 3 items when you're flipping a home. The one last thing I want to throw out there is just be very careful of specific city ordinances. In Los Angeles specifically, you've got hillside ordinances, you've got HPOZ ordinances, which restrict you from doing certain things. And then if you also buy in a condominium complex, you're dealing with a homeowners association as well, which controls the amount of work or the level of work you could do to the property as well. You might have grand ideas of remodeling the condominium, but the HOA might restrict you in doing certain things to the property. So those are the things I really want to, give a takeaway for everybody as far as what I've taken away from doing flips. And, it's always been productive because anytime you build something with your own hands and or build something with, the help of with contractors, there's always adding value, and people want to buy finished products generally. And I think Anthony can attest to that. Nobody wants to go in and do the work themselves. As much as we all want to, it's very daunting and scary to do the work. So if you can take that challenge on and do it yourself, it's always going to pay off, I feel like. Unless you make a traumatically bad mistake in buying a place, that's not going to be the case generally 95% of the time. So that would be my advice as far as flipping homes and making wealth accordingly. It's always paid off for me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marty. That was awesome. Before we wrap up, if anyone has questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A section at the bottom. I'm launching a poll right now for y'all to vote on. Our next webinar will definitely be discussing ADUs, but what other topic that we discussed today would you like more information on? Should we talk about more on loans? Should we talk more about trust? More details on investing in multifamily? So feel free to vote. I'll leave that up for a few minutes. And I'm going to just inform you on a few legislative updates that are coming down the road for California regarding housing. There's 5 housing bills that are being discussed right now that are going to help increase the housing stock in California. We want the housing stock to increase. Number 1, for affordability reasons, to help keep housing affordable. But number 2, we really want to make sure that we're able to have the state not turn into a renter's majority state. We want to keep it a homeowner majority state. For all the reasons we discussed today, real estate is still the #1 way to build wealth in this country. And if we're not giving that opportunity to as many people as possible, it's going to affect the future of our state and our country. So 5 bills are coming down the line, which are really great. Some of them are about having more density in their transit areas. Some of them are about making it easier to have duplexes in residential areas. Some of them are for CEQA exemptions. There was one that was kind of interesting that just got defeated actually recently, was we wanted to have commercial spaces, make it a little bit easier for maybe a mall that was going out of business to be converted into residential. For some reason that has not passed, that's been defeated so far. So it was SB 1385. That one has been defeated. But one very exciting thing that's coming up on our ballots for everyone to vote for in November is Prop 19. So Prop 19 is a tax portability transfer of your property taxes to another property for seniors, fire disaster victims, disabled people. So basically, if you're 55 or over and you want to move your house and buy another house, your property tax that you're paying now will reset to the property tax of when you're purchasing it. Property taxes are 1.25% of your purchase price. So if you bought a property for $100,000 back, a few years back, and you're only paying, a little over $1,000 a year in property tax, and now your property is worth $600,000, and you want to buy another property somewhere else in the state for $600,000, your property tax that you're paying of $1,000, if you bought a new house, your new property taxes are going to be what, $7,000 or something like that now. So for some people, it's restricting them from possibly being able to move. This bill will allow you to move and keep your original property tax bill, to move anywhere in the state of California for up to 3 times. If again, you're a senior over 55, if you've had gone through a fire disaster, or if you're disabled. So this is going to be a really exciting bill that I think is going to help free up a lot of properties and help people have the freedom to move. So that's Prop 19. So, keep your ears open for that. I just wanted to, again, really, really thank everybody for being on this call. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Marty, Natalie, Will. Thanks to my dad, and of course, Stephanie for being here, who's gone. We'll get her on the next call. It looks like we're going to do our next call in ADUs, and we're going to have a discussion in more detail with different types of loans as well. So congrats, Marty, Natalie, you're going to be on another call with us. And then we'll have, I didn't give you guys a first-time buyer option on this because we're definitely doing a call that's going to help people go from leasing to owning, and I want a full 1-hour webinar just on that. So that will be coming up. Again, all of the webinars that we do, they're posted now on our YouTube channel. This will be posted on our YouTube channel and our Facebook. So it'll be there for you to reference and share and pass on. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure having you, and I look forward to keeping you educated as you want us to. We'll be there for you. Just know that we are. And again, I'll be emailing everyone our multifamily meetup link, everybody's contact information and all of that. It'll also be posted on YouTube. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.